Welcome to the channel, everybody. Today we're diving into a topic that's, sadly, universal racism. Specifically, we're talking about the alarming discrimination black people face in countries all over the world. Sometimes it's easy to think it's just a them problem, right? Well, buckle up because we're about to take a trip around the globe to see how this poison seeps into every corner. Based on eye-opening surveys, reports, and studies, we've compiled a list of 10 countries where being black comes with a whole extra layer of challenges. Let's just say these places really need to check themselves before they wreck themselves. Alright, first up, we're heading to India. Now, India's known for its incredible diversity, right? 1 billion people, countless cultures, a whole rainbow of experiences. But here's the thing about rainbows. Sometimes they come with a side of storm clouds. See, India's got this whole thing about skin tone. It's like a hierarchy, and the darker you are, the further down the ladder you go. It's not just some unspoken thing, it's baked into their culture, their advertising, even their matrimonial ads. Billboards advertise skin-lightening creams like they're selling happiness in a bottle. Studies have shown that over 40% of Indians wouldn't want a neighbor of a different race. And almost 2/3 of Indians have either experienced or witnessed discrimination firsthand. It's like this unspoken rule: the closer you are to white, the closer you are to right. And if you're black, well, let's just say you're facing an uphill battle from the moment you step off the plane. Next up, we're jetting over to Lebanon, a country often celebrated for its hospitality. But as we're about to find out, that welcoming spirit doesn't always extend to everyone. Lebanon's population is relatively homogeneous, which might sound peaceful, but it also means a lot of Lebanese folks just aren't used to seeing people who look different from them. And when you're not used to something, sometimes you react with fear, suspicion, or just plain old ignorance. Imagine being a black person in Lebanon, trying to navigate a society where your very presence is treated as an anomaly. From casual microaggressions to blatant discrimination in housing and employment, the message is clear: you're not one of us. Reports from human rights groups paint a bleak picture of racial profiling, verbal abuse, and even physical violence against black people in Lebanon. Lebanon, with its rich history and vibrant culture, has the potential to be a beacon of diversity. But until they confront their prejudices head-on, that potential will remain tragically unfulfilled. Hold on tight, folks, because we're heading to Bahrain, a tiny island nation in the Persian Gulf that's often described as a glittering oasis. But behind the shimmering skyscrapers and luxury shopping malls lies a darker reality, especially if you're black. Bahrain has a system where your race, your religion, even your passport can determine your entire life trajectory. Bahrain's got a sizable migrant worker population. And guess who makes up a significant chunk of that workforce? Black and brown people from Africa and South Asia. They come to Bahrain chasing the promise of a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a system designed to exploit them. We're talking poverty wages, unsafe working conditions, and barely any legal protections. Black Bahrainis also face discrimination, particularly those from the Afro-Arab community. They're often denied opportunities, stereotyped, and made to feel like second-class citizens in their own country. Bahrain, with its ambitions of becoming a global hub, needs to realize that true progress can't exist alongside such blatant inequality. Buckle up, folks, because we're heading to Libya, a nation still reeling from years of conflict and instability. And in the aftermath of war, old wounds of prejudice and discrimination fester. Libya's population is predominantly Arab, and the concept of racial diversity isn't exactly embraced with open arms. Over half of Libyans have openly admitted to feeling uncomfortable around people of different races. It's about a deep-seated prejudice that manifests in shocking ways. We're talking about racial profiling, hate speech, and even violence against black people, particularly sub-Saharan Africans. Imagine being a black migrant in Libya, fleeing conflict or poverty, only to be met with hostility and abuse. Reports have emerged of black migrants being detained, tortured, and even sold into slavery in Libya. It's a horrifying reality that exposes the dark underbelly of a nation grappling with its own demons. Libya, with its potential for rebuilding and reconciliation, needs to understand that true peace can only be achieved when all its citizens are treated with dignity and respect. Get ready to time travel, folks, because we're heading to Egypt, a land steeped in ancient history and pharaonic grandeur. But beneath the shadow of the pyramids lies a modern-day reality that's anything but grand for many black people. Egypt's population is overwhelmingly Arab, and the concept of diversity hasn't quite caught on yet. If you're black, especially if you're from sub-Saharan Africa, you quickly realize that you don't fit into that narrow definition. You become the other, the outsider, the one who's constantly reminded that they don't truly belong. We're talking about discrimination in housing, employment, even just walking down the street. Black people in Egypt often face verbal abuse, racial slurs, and even physical violence, all because of the color of their skin. Egypt, with its rich history and cultural heritage, has a responsibility to do better, to live up to its own legacy of inclusivity. Alright folks, it's time to address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the eagle in the room. That's right, we're talking about the United States of America. We know America has a race problem, but just because we know it exists doesn't mean we can stop talking about it. Black people are disproportionately stopped, searched, and incarcerated, denied opportunities in housing, education, and employment, and the threat of police brutality is ever present. For many Black Americans, routine encounters with law enforcement can turn deadly. America, with its promises of equality, needs to take a long, hard look in the mirror and confront the systemic racism that plagues its soul. Hold on tight, folks, because we're heading to Myanmar, a nation grappling with a dark history of ethnic violence and oppression. The Rohingya Muslims face unspeakable atrocities, denied citizenship, and subjected to systematic discrimination. In 2017, Myanmar's military launched a brutal crackdown, driving hundreds of thousands into Bangladesh. Villages burned, mass killings, and widespread sexual violence ensued. The UN called it a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. Myanmar must be held accountable and ensure the safety and dignity of all its citizens. Get ready for some culture shock, folks, because we're heading to South Korea, the land of K-pop kimchi, and a whole lot of contradictions when it comes to race. South Korea is often praised for its economic success and technological prowess, but beneath the shiny surface lies a complex reality for anyone who doesn't fit the mold of the ideal Korean. South Korea is a remarkably homogeneous society, and they're not exactly known for their openness to outsiders. And if you're black, well, get ready to stand out like a kimchi pancake at a rice cake festival. We're talking about stares, whispers, and sometimes even outright discrimination in housing, employment, and even dating. South Korea is slowly becoming more diverse, but old habits die hard. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're heading to Serbia, a nation still haunted by the ghosts of war and ethnic tension. Serbia has a long and complicated history with its ethnic minorities, particularly the Roma community. They've faced centuries of discrimination, marginalized, ostracized, and denied basic rights. Even though Serbia is trying to move on from its past, those deep-seated prejudices haven't magically disappeared. We're talking about segregated schools, limited access to healthcare, and widespread discrimination in housing and employment. Imagine being a Roma child in Serbia, growing up in a society where you're constantly reminded that you're different, that you're less than, that you don't truly belong. Serbia, with its aspirations of joining the European Union, needs to address this systemic discrimination and create a society where everyone has an equal chance to succeed. Fasten your seatbelts, folks, because we're heading to Qatar, a tiny nation with a whole lot of oil money and a whole lot of contradictions when it comes to human rights. Qatar loves to portray itself as a modern, progressive country, but scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find a system built on the backs of exploited migrant workers, many of whom are black and brown people from South Asia and Africa. We're talking about people lured to Qatar with the promise of a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a system of modern-day slavery. They're denied basic rights, subjected to horrific working conditions, and often treated like disposable commodities. And if you dare to speak out against the system, well, let's just say Qatar isn't exactly known for its free speech. Qatar, with its ambitions of hosting the World Cup and becoming a global player, needs to realize that true progress can't be built on the backs of the exploited and the oppressed. So, there you have it, folks, a glimpse into the realities of racism in 10 countries around the world. It's a sobering reminder that this poison knows no borders, no language, no culture. But here's the good news, just like racism is everywhere, so is the fight against it. All over the world, people are standing up, speaking out, and demanding better. We need to keep the conversation going, keep shining a light on injustice, and keep pushing for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content.